it's very curious that you would call me a nodder when I'm simply trying to speak about where you bracketed things in terms of set theory, and it's interesting because the Venus de Milo relationship to the bust idea is like what I speculate is a primitive language prior to the not operator, prior to um, uh, the formalization of trying to find truth function. And so the bust of Beethoven would function like an empty set, where, to answer the questions that I've asked you already, but the Venus de Milo would be like bracketing around an empty set, such that to speak of those brackets, you're opening up a infinitude, a possible infinitude of re-bracketing these sets, such that where the not operator is inaccessible, and or we're not speaking of it. Even though my first video was demonstrating the idea of not in terms of division, or the minus sign in terms of complements. The problem with this discussion is, and where I'm trying to drive this to, is to different domains of discourse, because eventually, to speak and to say that the Venus de Milo lacks something is not well. It's not a nodder's game. It's a framing. It's to say that there is a sense in the term lack here, and then to speak about, this infinitude of bracketing, we would eventually, in set theory, need to run into the problems with what is equivalent to what is an element of what's included in what, and we would see that the cardinality of sets, the numbering of them, would eventually reach a paradox with the infinitude of countable ordinals, and all this is based off of the convention of lambda calculus, and how it has to be read left to right, and how the function of the calculus can always be separate from the calculus itself, but that it can also always nest itself within that calculus. And so at this paradox of trying to reframe or frame a universe where lack doesn't lack meaning, but to say that the linguistics, as linguistics are we try to pigeonhole them into set theory, is not going to work, because then you would run into problems where, X includes Y, but the problem is that if you replace X for parents, then you would get children that you would have to say are included and they're equivalent, which is non-applicable. But then you also reach a point where you get to this platitude, this cardinal counting platitude, that where the deduction ends and the rationality ends and the irrationality begin, and it's at this point where I'm saying, within the deductive aspects of the cardinality of the set theory, of how propositional logic analyzes language, we can agree to make sense of things and to bracket them in such a fashion that's consistent with the rules of the set theory, but that the paradox itself, the irrationality, the induction that incurs, this is where I will say the domain of linguistics comes into play. And so that to say, to apply a different function, which you call silly talk, to atheists equal, let's say, belief in no God, would be to say the A in that atheist would be equivalent to a not theist equals belief in no God. Let's say the no then functions as a not operator. So then you have not theist equals basically belief in not God or not belief in God, and you divide that by nots, and hence you get theist equal belief in God. Well, if one then wants to take, let's say, the linguistic set, or the word lack, which houses meaning, has meaning, holds meaning in a common vernacular, although and it cannot be reduced to what it is you're saying, but we employ this. Like I said, I'm not a nodder, but we are employing, and we're trying to use a linguistic or a logical propositional discussion or a distillation in order to say, well, what is it about lack? Let's say atheist equals lack in belief in God, and that we equate the A in atheist to mean not, and then we equate the lack, like in the Venus de Milo, lacking arms, to also have a not operator, and then we divide by not. We would have theists equal belief in God, and that these two can be transposed. It's a transitive discussion where the elements of any given set, it's like they're not the same thing as elements that are included in the set. And so I'm just saying that what it is your video does is it's pedantic. It's your and of course you now can develop your nodders argument and develop a class of cases of individuals that are nodders, but you would have to find an exception to what it is I'm stating, because I'm not emphasizing a disagreement with what you're saying. I'm just saying, in this domain of discourse, in this application of discourse, this yields everything that you're saying upon acceptance of this type of language that has this recursive and negative attributes. It leads to what it is you're pointing to. So I've agreed to that already. It's when I say initially in the other video that I'm looking for a workaround, I'm speaking of the irrationality of trying to take different lingual meanings and reduce them via logical propositions into set theory, as if that's always ever applicable. And I'm trying to get you to agree that and you'll sum it up as silly talk. Well, why don't you use logical propositions to try to find the meaning, like a linguist does, like computer analysis of language does, trying to find meaning in whatever is put forth as a proposition. You had said that when I say that my non-red car is in this set, I have not used a proposition. No, you have. You have proposed something for discussion. So I could say you have laid out a new proposition, and we can now discuss that proposition. But you're trying to qualify. This is not a proposition, very much like this is not a pipe. This is not a pipe painting is not about the statement, this is not a pipe, it's not about the depiction of a pipe, it's the whole painting. It's the whole body corpus of language. That's all I'm getting at. So whatever you want to do, whatever your hobbies are that make you feel complete, I'm just not buying it for adults.